Do you believe in man-made climate change?
Look, climate change is real, has gone on for millions of years, always will. The arrogant naivety of people who think that you can stop the power of the sun, stop the power of volcanoes.
But talking about man-made climate change.
Hear me out. Yeah. But there's no evidence that man-made CO2 is going to change climate change. Given that it's gone on for millions of years, it will go on for millions of years.
Hold on, sorry, you're saying there's no evidence that man-made climate change is changing CO2,
well,
is that what you're saying?
So how did climate change happen before man-made CO2?
What is it that the vast majority of experts who believe that human activity has impacted climate change since the Industrial Revolution, what is it that you know that they don't?
I've read the International Governmental Panel on Climate Change's report, and it says if you get to net zero tomorrow, it'll make no difference to sea level rise for between 200 years and 1,000 years. In other words, they've not got a clue, and it won't make any difference. We're being lied to, we're being misinformed, and we've got the courage to say to people, we've got to stop this nonsense. We all care about the environment, we all care about the countryside. That's why I don't want pylons blighting our countryside. That's why I don't want solar panels on it.
But that same panel that you were talking about, the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, said human activities are the main cause of climate change. Do you agree with that? That's a yes or no question.
No, that's absolute garbage, and I've just proven it because the climate change for millions of years before man-made CO2. They are lying to people, and the Norwegian government's own equivalent of our ONS has recently produced a report along the lines of what I'm saying there's no evidence based on the real data that proves that suggestion.
The overwhelming scientific community.
There's masses of debate
say
on
that the rate of
I can give you a list of 1,000
climate change since the Industrial Revolution has been vastly exacerbated by human activity. Do you not agree with that?
No, I don't. I can give you a list of 1,000 experts and scientists and professors, including...
That is a real minority.
No,
why are they right and not the majority?
It's not a minority. There are loads and loads of scientists. There are loads of scientists who are terrified to speak because they won't get any research funding if they tell it as it is. There's so much money in the vested interests who are trying to push this agenda on us. It's got to stop. Only Reform UK is going to stop it. And do you know what? We're leading in the polls. Maybe the British people are starting to realise we're talking the truth. They know they're being lied to.
So NASA, when they say human activities are the primary cause of global warming and climate change, the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, human activities are the main cause of climate change. They've got it wrong.
So President Trump has just been elected with a massive majority to lead the US, and he adopts our position. Maybe actually the American people, when they've been given a vote, they've realised that people like NASA, part of the establishment, they're wrong, and actually President Trump and we are correct.
So do you think we should trust experts generally?
I think there are experts and there's vested interests, and then there's people who tell the truth. The problem here is that money is driving the vested interests who are making fortunes out of the renewable industry, and it's decent ordinary people who are being ripped off, paying higher bills, higher cost of living, and we're telling it as it is. Scrap net zero, you'll have lower bills and a lower cost of living.
Do you think you're in line with the public though? Because the most recent...
Clearly, we're going up in the polls. We're literally leading in the polls.
On this particular issue, because the majority of the public, according to the most recent YouGov poll, back net zero.
If you ask the same people, do you believe... Yes, we believe in the countryside and looking after the environment, but if you ask those people, if net zero is going to give you higher bills, higher cost of living, do you want to pay an extra £400 or £500 before tax every year because of net zero, when we only represent 1% of CO2 emissions of the world? The answer very quickly changes. If you ask the right question, you'll get the right answer.
Richard Tice, a leader of Reform UK, attracted significant attention when he stated that it was absolute garbage to claim that human activities are the primary cause of climate change. This remark comes amid increasing global debate over the issue of climate change, with most scientists and politicians agreeing that human actions are a major factor in exacerbating the situation. Tice criticized the argument that human activity, particularly the burning of fossil fuels, deforestation, and agriculture, is a key driver of global warming, dismissing it as misleading and lacking solid scientific foundation. However, Tice's opinion has been heavily criticized by climate activists and the scientific community. Climate scientists point to overwhelming evidence that human activity is directly responsible for climate change, particularly through the increased emission of greenhouse gases. These emissions have led to a clear rise in global temperatures over the past century, with substantial evidence backing this claim from various scientific institutions worldwide. Tice's stance may be driven by his political view that emphasizes reducing government intervention in the economy and scaling back strict environmental policies, such as carbon taxes and emission reduction measures. Along with his party, Reform UK, Tice has often criticized policies that he believes would harm the economy without providing clear evidence of their effectiveness in addressing climate change. However, while Tice and his supporters may oppose current climate policies, their views stand in stark contrast to the consensus of the global scientific community, which asserts that urgent action is necessary to mitigate the adverse impacts of climate change. A deeper analysis shows that Tice's statement reflects a broader debate over how to address climate change, with clear divisions between those who favor government intervention, market freedom, and environmental concerns. His claim that human activities are not the main cause of climate change may find support from some conservative groups or politicians who are concerned about government spending or tax increases to combat climate change. However, this also raises questions about the role of environmental policies in a world facing the severe challenges of climate change and environmental degradation.
Dougal. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This matter must be so important if it consumes so much of the Minister's credibility and £18 billion of taxpayers' money. You would think there'd be more than 4 government backbenchers here to speak about it. Is it that they don't care or they lack the literacy to discuss these issues? And when the Minister was on the Today programme this morning saying that we have passed the situation on to the White House and we await their feedback, and when we receive it we will know exactly where we stand as a government. Is that the type of sovereignty he's after?
Good question. Well, there were so many different bits of that question I didn't recognise, Mr. Speaker. I mean, I wasn't, for a start, I wasn't on the Today programme this morning, so I don't know who he's referring to, and I certainly don't recognise the 18 billion figure, so I don't really understand what he's getting at all.
None of us objected.
In this exchange, Dave Dogan, a member of Parliament, is questioning the minister's handling of a serious issue involving a significant amount of taxpayers' money. He highlights the discrepancy between the gravity of the situation, which he claims involves billions of pounds, and the lack of government participation in the discussion, citing that only a few government backbenchers are present to address it. Dogan implies that this lack of engagement could either reflect a lack of concern or a failure in understanding the issue at hand. He further criticizes the minister's response on the Today program, where the minister reportedly passed the matter on to the White House, stating that they are waiting for feedback to determine the government's position. Dogan questions whether this is the type of sovereignty the minister is seeking, suggesting that deferring such important matters to another country undermines the government's autonomy and decision-making capabilities. In response, Stephen Doughty attempts to clarify the confusion, expressing that he was not on the Today programme that morning and does not recognise the billion-pound figure Dogan referenced. Doughty seems to dismiss Dogan's claims as either misunderstandings or misstatements, especially regarding the specific financial figures and the supposed deferral of responsibility to the White House. His response indicates that he doesn't understand the context or substance of Dogan's criticism, and he downplays the significance of the accusations by distancing himself from the specific details mentioned. This exchange reflects a deepening frustration within the political discussion. Dogan's questioning highlights concerns about accountability, governance, and transparency, particularly in the management of taxpayer funds and the government's handling of critical issues. His rhetorical questions suggest that the government's handling of the matter, especially its reliance on foreign entities for feedback, might be seen as a failure to act decisively and independently. On the other hand, Doughty's response attempts to deflect and downplay the accusations, but it also raises questions about the government's ability to provide clarity and leadership on the issue. Ultimately, this debate points to a broader concern over the government's responsiveness and its role in protecting the interests of its citizens, especially when large sums of public money are involved.